A House committee has approved the Senate's bill to regulate ghost guns. They are untraceable firearms that can be partially made at home with 3D printers. Sue Copen reports.
Baltimore City is not just battling a rise in violent crime, but an increase in the use of ghost guns. Ghost guns are not required to have serial numbers right now, so they can't be traced. And they're a growing problem in the city. The Baltimore City Police Department reported just 9 ghost guns recovered in 2018. That number jumped to 352 last year, accounting for 15% of all guns seized. So far this year, the department has recovered 69 ghost guns, with over a third used in a crime. But it's not a problem limited to the city.
I'm a prosecutor in Anne Arundel County, and there are cases that I handle that are related to the illegal possession of guns. And a lot of the guns that are showing up right now are what are called polymer 80s. They are these ghost guns. They were built from kits, and they're showing up in the hands of younger and younger people because they're relatively accessible.
Delegate Luke Clippinger chairs the Judiciary Committee, which approved and sent to the Senate its own version of ghost gun legislation. That bill still awaits a hearing. A Senate-approved version faced a hearing in the Judiciary Committee this week. Senator Susan Lee is the sponsor of that bill.
I just didn't want to hear about another tragedy happening like we heard in my county too, Magruder High School, where there was a shooting by a teenager of another teenager, and it was done by a ghost gun.
The legislation requires all ghost guns be engraved with serial numbers and the owners undergo background checks. Among those opposing the legislation, the Maryland State Rifle and Pistol Association. In its written testimony to the Senate, the organization said, "This country has long held a tradition for personally built firearms since prior to its inception as a nation. There are already laws on the books at both the state and federal levels that could be leveraged to punish the criminal element responsible for violence using firearms."
There are some people who build guns as hobbies. They're hobbyists, and sometimes they put together antique guns, and there's been some concern in that community that they won't have enough time to get them engraved, or they won't be able to find places. I think by extending the deadline, it would give them enough time to be able to do that.
The federal government is also expected to enact regulations on ghost guns before the year is out.
The federal regulations will certainly, they will set the pathway forward. They will say, okay, here's what you need to do with one of these weapons. What we will say is, if you don't do what the ATF says to do, then we have a penalty on the back end here on the state level.
It's common sense legislation that will save lives, prevent serious harm, will also help our law enforcement solve crimes and help our state's attorneys prosecute those crimes.
In Annapolis, Sue Copen for State Circle.